Welcome, and thank you so much for coming to the Musician Health Symposium. So, as I mentioned earlier, this event is brought on by a partnership with the MEAD School of Music and LunART. LunART is a festival dedicated to celebrating and uplifting women in the arts. So feel free to check out MEAD School of Music and LunART's website if you want to learn more about what we do and who we are. So today I'm pleased to introduce the panel discussion to discuss mental health in musicians. So we have Professor Vardi, Dr. DiRaimondo, and Professor Jessica Johnson. So today, feel free to ask questions as we talk, save them at the end. We'll have time at the end as well to discuss what we're speaking with today. And we'll get started. Would you mind introducing yourselves and about your background and affiliations?
Jess, would you mind being first?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jess Johnson, and I've been on the faculty here this is my 22nd year. So I'm now a full-blooded cheesehead. I'm on the piano faculty, and I head up the graduate piano pedagogy program as well. Now, if you detect a little bit of a southern accent, I'm originally from North Carolina by way of Ann Arbor, Michigan. That was an extra little bit of an accent that I couldn't get. Oh, yeah, you were hearing it. A little.
I'm DiRaimondo, and I'm super honored to be here. This is fantastic, and I'm so glad that we're talking about this. I went to medical school here in the 90s, and prior to that, I had majored in pre-med and studio art. And when I came to med school, I thought, what the heck am I doing? But I became a psychiatrist, so I practiced psychiatry. And in addition to that, when I was in my last year of med school, I met some people, and they were doing this crazy thing called aerial dance. And I took a workshop. I was doing internal medicine, and they let me go at 8 o'clock to go to this workshop on Wednesday nights or something. And so since 1998, I've been dancing, doing aerial dance, kind of like our local troupe. It's kind of like a Cirque du Soleil, but the budget's like 1 million of Cirque du Soleil. But I costume design, choreograph dance, do all these things, and because of the pandemic, I started painting again. So, and I practice medicine and I do psychiatry. So mental health is my passion, and so is creativity, and I think it all just sort of blends. So I'm excited to hear where you all are at and what thoughts you have.
Okay, so I guess all of you were here, or most of you were here during the Feldenkrais practice that we had. I'm Vardi, and the accent is from Israel, actually. I try to be less, if I introduce myself, just saying who I am, coming from Israel without the influence of being in this country for so many years, I will say, I'm Vardi, and I will be teaching you about something that I think I know what to do. Anyway, the accent is Israeli. Now I teach cello. I studied in the States in the 70s. 3 years at Indiana University and 3 years at Yale. And I went back to Israel and was playing with orchestra and teaching. And then in 1990, 31 years ago, I came here, and I'm still here. And in the meantime, I was lucky enough to get a grant from university to study the Feldenkrais method. So I did a 4 years training of that method and became Feldenkrais practitioner, certified practitioner, and luckily we can offer this course here at UW School of Music in the springs usually. So this is who I am.
Hi, my name is Anna Tinder. I am a senior studying here in music performance. I'm a violinist. I am the person behind this event. I'm the host, and it's a great honor. Thank you all for coming here. It really means a lot. So this whole event was brought on by a 2-year injury and experience of chronic pain when I started playing a lot more intensely as a sophomore. If you're interested in hearing more about that story, as well as some other stories by our guest speakers, you can check out the QR code on your program. So you can check that out. It's on YouTube, available for watching. Before we get started, we have a little excerpt to read from Articulations on Love, Friendship, and Healing. So So I'm going to put it up on the slides, and we'll also read it and take some time to discuss it. This is by Jeff Brown. It's not about letting it go. It's about letting it in. It's about letting it deep. It's about letting it through. It's about being true to your feelings. It's about giving your experiences the attention they deserve. And that may take a moment, or it may take years. The trick is to not shame your need to hold on to what has yet to be resolved. Let it go is the mantra of the self-avoidant, feigning resolution because they lack the courage or the preparedness to face their feelings. Let's not play that game. Let's let things in and through until they are fully and truly ready to shift. Let's let it grow into the transformation at its heart. We write our story by fully living it, not by letting it go before it's time. So that was by Jeff Brown. This is offered by Professor Vardi. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that a friend of mine from Johannesburg, South Africa, sent me a quote of this person. I just hate it. Oh my goodness, this is so clear and eloquent. I need to get this book. So I got this book, and last night I thought, wow, it would be nice to share with you. That's the first page in this book. I just loved it, and I wanted to share it.
Just dive in.
Okay, so first, this is being called the mental health panel discussion. So first, let's talk about what we're here to talk. Let's define it. So first question, what is mental health and why does it matter?
I'll start. I was reading these questions and thinking about it and thinking, to what degree do I have to prepare? I do this every day. And I was like, so I thought, what is mental health? And the most basic thing I could think of is when your eyes open in the morning, are you motivated to just be? Whether it's you want to roll over and sleep and feel at peace or get up and go. I think so often for people it's that first breath in the morning of either excitement or neutrality or doom. And so I think, what is it that compels us to get, and it doesn't have to be up and go or up and out, it doesn't have to be a verb, but what inspires us to just want to be alive that day? And to me, mental health is some sort of sense that keeps you in this life. And we all know what it feels like to wake up and not want to face the day. So that's just a really basic answer for what is that first breath when you are conscious of it in the morning is one piece of mental health for me.
I love that. And piggybacking on what Linda's saying, as well as that wonderful quote Maria shared with us. When I looked at this question, the two words that popped into my head were, number one, vulnerability. When you have enough clarity, equanimity, that you can be present and you can be vulnerable. You feel safe, you're able to thrive in whatever space, environment, or time of your life that you're working in. And the other thing is authenticity, which also resonates with this quote. So are you able to be your truest self, whatever that is, as it's evolving in that moment? At any time that you're having to maneuver around those two things, you can resist, react, be defensive, mistrustful, and maybe survive but not thrive. And I think when we talk about practicing art in particular, if you can't be in that creative space where you can be really open, it's going to block you in some very important ways. And not only in our art making, but in our ability to foster connection with other people, which is also essential to that.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
I think I'm looking at health at the term health in general, and I personally don't like to divide it to mental, spiritual, physical. Just health, what does that mean? I mean, just feel healthy. I feel healthy. Good. Whether I am or not, I mean, I feel healthy. And during my introduction to the Fallen Christ, a lot of, I mentioned also that actually through the somatic education that we go through, we also affect other parts of us, and the mental part is part of it also. So I have hard time compartmentalizing which one is which, and the purpose of my purpose in life is to get to know me better, and by getting to know me better, I can also help others maybe get to know them better. I cannot impose anything on anybody, nor I do want to. I just want to dive deeper and deeper in it to understand different things that I do, and through that, I think I know that I become more effective, and that's why I think when we perform music, for instance, sensitive audience are going to know whether you are very preoccupied with guarding yourself from failing, which calls into the performance a lot of the energy to guard yourself, to protect yourself, or you're free and allow the energy to go in order to be creative and communicate with the audience. And this balance is very, very important for everybody. And it's not either only mental, but it's also physical.
Can I ask Yuri a question based on his answer?
Sure.
I'm curious, you said with exuberance, which is lovely, I feel healthy. I'm wondering how you would describe healthy if you couldn't use the word healthy. Like, what does that mean?
I'm
without...
here.
Here, okay, I'll take that.
I'm here, and the sky is blue, and the sun is there, and I enjoy it.
And I can see your eyes. I can see your eyes are twinkling and healthy and wide and bright. I just think it's
Well,
an interesting thing. You
know,
say these things and we take it for granted, like, oh, healthy, you're healthy. What the heck does that mean?
Well, you can see my eyes because I had an eyelid lift, so.
And you look young. Whatever that is.
I've been playing around with this idea of, I call it practicing joy.
Yeah.
And the reason I use joy is because happy is a loaded word. Like for a lot of us, it's been, misused, or it comes with all this baggage and expectations of always being whatever. Whereas joy, I can be even in despair. I can notice something and feel the joy of connection with another person who's really there with me. And what you said about the sky just now, I think it comes out of my own mindfulness meditation practice. Noticing, I call them extraordinary, ordinary moments throughout the day. And it could be the most mundane thing, like a leaf that brushes by while I'm walking, and I just notice the beautiful color of it for a second. It happens a million times a day when I'm teaching, because I really love teaching. And it's the interaction, and a student will discover something, and I'll just sort of like go, wow, this is one of those moments. I'm just going to take it in. And that's really powerful for my overall state of health, as we're framing it.
So how does mental health and health relate to performance and even injuries in musicians, the opposite of good health?
One thing we haven't mentioned, I'll just jump in, is that when we're resisting, avoiding, and not paying attention, we can push through pain of any kind, right? Because we're just not awake, we're not present. So I think presence, and you said being, and you both said things similar, I think it's central to this question. So whether you have an injury or not, are you showing up? Are you present? Are you noticing and integrating it? For example, one of the things that I talk about a lot in my teaching, does the gesture match how you want it to sound? If I'm playing a passage that's playful and joyous, and I feel like this, I'm a pianist, so I'm doing that, then it doesn't quite work musically, artistically, and chances are I'm using the wrong set of alignment, coordination, physically too. If I can get those things to align and I pay attention and approach it with curiosity, I can, you know, redirect myself in a more helpful way of looking at the problem. So that's something, just paying attention.
Injuries, if I may, most students know, I think. I got into Feldenkrais following an injury that a chiropractor actually injured me. So for about 8 months, I didn't know how to press, put my fingers and make the string touch the fingerboard on the cello. That was in the middle of my tenure track. Oh, so what am I to do now? So despair, of course. So that's one choice, which I was mourning the situation for a while. But for me, it was not an option just to give up and say, okay, that's it. I mean, I'm a victim of this. And a friend told me about the Feldenkrais method, and luckily I found a wonderful Feldenkrais practitioner in Milwaukee, and started going on a weekly basis to see her. Oh my goodness. I mean, all of a sudden, all of those things that I learned in Bloomington and at Yale started getting together. And for me to noticing what is happening inside me, following whatever, I mean, the prescribed injury with spinal stenosis and all those terminology that is so haunting. I was just so much into figuring out how to play better and make long
Long story short, long injury shorter.
Injury shorter. Applied for the Art Institute award, and I luckily got it. And I dived into undertaking the Feldenkrais training for 4 years, and my goodness, did I learn about vulnerability, about everything about myself, and about playing. I ended up playing better than before the injury, I think. I had learned so much about teaching, and I just could add another layer to myself. So that was a choice on my part, how to deal with injury. And there are many different ways. I mean, some people just choose, I think, in some ways, who cannot do otherwise, to just feel completely devastated and yeah, that's another option, and give up. I personally decided not to do it.
And we're so glad.
I have a trumpet and a guitar and a concertina and all these things, but I'm not a musician. I'm a wannabe kind of jack of all trades. Play everything just a little bit. But I come from athletics and certainly with dance, and so injury is obviously a big piece of that. But what helped me get into integrative medicine growing up, my dad was an orthopedist. And so he was, you know, the town orthopedist, and all of my friends who were athletes, and so-and-so breaks their hamstring, and so-and-so breaks their arm, and so-and-so this and that. And they loved going to my dad because the key thing that he would say to people is listen to your body. And it was all about giving the power back to the person. And that was sort of unheard of at that point. This is the 70s and the 80s. And that a doctor would be saying, you tell me what you need and what your body's saying. We're going to put this on for this many weeks, but let's see how you feel. But we're going to take it off. It says, yeah, about 6 weeks after your knee scope before you should be doing layups again or whatever. But you listen to your body and you let your body tell. And that's, I think, the same with any kind of injury in dance. I was climbing up on a car to climb on a wall to put on my stilts because I was dressed up as a praying mantis, and I slid on the car and hit my foot. And long story short is, 3 hours later, I'm in the emergency room with a fractured fifth metatarsal. And it's that same thing, like, okay, I've got this break, like I can't unbreak it with my mind and just go, stop being broken, you know? So what is the next step in breaking it down into steps to succeed? Now, I felt despair. That's when I bought the concertina. I'm like, I can't no longer I'll be the monkey in the corner playing my concertina, you know? So, but it's sort of, and he was also the person who told me, like, because you know I'm going to be a psychiatrist. He said, Linda, if you, or how would he say to me? He said, if you're going to schedule if someone has back pain, I don't schedule the OR. I ask them how their marriage is. I was like, whoa. And I'm a teenager at this point. And then, of course, later on, I read about Kundalini and the chakras and the second chakra and relationships and the energy flow. And so I think, like, there's so much metaphor in injury and there's so much to learn in injury. And I think sometimes my injuries have been that slap from the universe to say, slow down, pay attention. And the question I have then is, how do I know to slow down and pay attention before the injury has to happen? Like, can we prevent that injury part from happening? Just like, but it's going to happen. That's life. None of us is perfect and none of us is fully balanced. But so a combination of awareness, but then also when the injury happens is finding a place to listen to your body and let your body, and being open to the communication you see your body's giving you. Look what I just did. I folded my habituated way instead of this way.
So obviously, as we discussed, physical health, mental health, injuries, they're all intertwined and they are all connected. In your opinion, what do you think are the best ways we can do in working towards destigmatizing physical health, mental health, and injuries? Big question, I know.
Exactly what we're doing. Exactly. Easy.
Actually, I have something to add, I think. We actually should welcome all those things because these are guides for us to learn something. I think COVID-19 is something that is here also to teach us something about many, many other things. And if we just dread what is going on and we are not open to learn from it and take it as our guidance. Okay, let's listen to the teacher. Injury is the teacher now. Oh, our experience. Hey, what can we learn from it about us, about ourselves, about our relationship? I mean, I remember after Feldenkrais, I came across a person named Caroline Mays, NYSS. Okay, I saw it, oh, she has a retreat in Sedona, I'm going. And I spent two retreats there. Oh my goodness, did I learn about me and about other things through that experience. But it's not that somebody told me, it just happens also because I want to learn. And I think the more you're curious about, okay, that's it. I mean, I got injured. I mean, you got injured. No, did somebody gave you a, somebody was violent with you that you got injured from? No. It was from?
Just playing a lot.
Playing a lot. Okay. This is, I mean, playing a lot. Okay, I got injured, and then now the stigma of being injured. And can I reveal it because maybe I will not make it in the future, or people should not really know about it, and I have to hide it, or that it's such so many different messages are happening here. Rather, oh, yeah, I can mourn about it. I can really, I mean, whatever happens to me, but I can also take it as a learning tool, a learning experience, because before injury I didn't have space and time to look more deeply inward. That's how I see it.
I love that, and I love that you use that to empower yourself and grow in so many ways. And I know it's so devastating to go through this on so many levels, but I've had a number of students who are working through things like that, and you try to say, this can be transformative. This can change who you are as an artist. It can really get you to think about what really matters to you. And then when you show up and you pour your heart into it, it's going to be at a whole different level. And as the pedagogue, the other thing is it gives you a lot of insight into teaching. you have to investigate things in a deeper way and really understand things that may have been intuitive in the past. So even if that pays it forward, 5, 10 years down the road, you're really investing in yourself as a whole musician.
I breathe so well after I listen to you.
I love that.
What can the musicians and students do when they're in the throes of an injury or dealing with pain from playing?
Get enough sleep. Prioritize sleep. That's a real basic. I mean, and I realize I can speak in a lot of metaphors about it, but I think what I learned in school was the healthiest I was when I let my body have downtime and repair time, and whatever that means. Sleep is just my fastest way to say that. But I think it's a real awareness to self-care, and the body cannot heal itself if it maintains the same pace and intensity which got you into the injury, is my opinion. And I think that it takes discipline. You have to change the environment of your body to get to heal. Maybe you have to change the environment. But to me, one thing I tell all my patients, and especially I see so many people with depression and anxiety and this, and you start to really look at their day, it's like, well, no wonder your body is so full of adrenaline. You don't give it any downtime. It's just adrenalized because you wake up and it has to keep you going. There's a survival mechanism that's in all of us. And so how do we deprogram some of that so that our immune system and our body it's just basic cellular and energetic, and all these different factors come in. Joy, we have to let our body have downtime so it can heal. But that becomes frightening because all of our lists all of our lives are full of endless to-dos. And so how do we gain wisdom about how to curate all those to-dos so it allows us to do the healing? You guys have wisdom to flesh something out with
Boy, it's so similar, my thoughts. I mean, I use the term like countercultural, or it's a total paradigm shift.
Yeah.
You have to really fight it because we're rewarded in most cultures for being like productive, whatever that means. So if you're going to honor your process and what you need, you have to really make a decision and a choice and advocate for yourself. And hopefully choose people around you, like Professor Vardi, that will help support that journey. I think that's big. And I was thinking too of the idea of stress, physical stress. So let's say that if you get road rage on the way home or whatever, and somebody cuts you off, and you're like, I don't personally tend to do this. I usually daydream and forget that the lights change it, and then I'm causing road rage. Yes, exactly. So it's a bad example for me to use because I'm the daydreamer person who shouldn't probably use a motorized vehicle. I'm better walking, I think. But if you have something that causes stress and you feel it in your body, you have an actual stress response, it will stay in your body until you find a way to move through it. And literally I use the word move through it because some of the best ways to do it is to actually move.
Yep.
And I love that you said rest, Linda, because I think of active rest as something I've been exploring. Tony and I are empty nesters now, and we bought kayaks this summer. And for me, that's something that if I'm like frazzled, we'll decide to go for an hour in my kayak, and boom, I'm just like in it. I'm present, I'm really responding to it, and I'm in a completely different mental state when I return from that. So it doesn't have to be napping, although sometimes that's great too, resting. But think about it, I have one student who's a neuroscience double major with piano and neuroscience. Can you imagine? And he's always talking about the chemicals you mentioned, the neurotransmitters, things that happen during the stress response. And we've got to reset our brains. And finding those ways, laughing is great. I have a sister that I can have deep belly laughs, the kind where it's embarrassing, but that I know is really good for my body. Making art is good for you. If it's cooking, gardening, doing something creative that you really give to that is also good. So finding ways to move through the stress cycle, I think, are really, really important.
I have little story. Yesterday we had auditions, and one of the incoming applicant told us about she was playing this and she was playing this and she's running and doing that also, and she's really good at this and that. And people really, it was an interview because we got the you know, the way that we do the auditions now, they send the video recording of their playing, and so we had an idea, and I could hear in her playing her busyness in the, so I after other questions I asked, and what do you do during your free time? I have no free time. It was so clear that, okay, thank you. Yeah, and it was just I didn't tell her that she needed free time. I just asked, and I think it might have registered, or maybe yes, maybe not. Yeah. Which is where I think the idea of getting injured and yeah, I'm very much into also being there with yourself, being injured, and whatever it means, just living that and just giving a little time also to the sensation or the experience of now I'm injured. It's also, that's how we very often formulate the condition. And I'm very much not in favor of trying to extract anything from the experience. Just being there and embrace that. Just you can. I actually, some of my students know that sometimes in lessons I teach them how to embrace themselves, just physically. And then if they have the left hand on top of the right, then change it and feel how it feels to embrace yourself this way. And just, that's it.
What would you define an injury? If you had to define an injury, what would you say?
What is injury?
Yeah.
That's too hard. Go to the next one.
I stay away from formulating or defining things. I listen. I want to listen. How do you? I mean, what's your experience? I mean, of what is injury for you? I mean, I have my own experience, but in general, I don't want to stay there for too long. I want to be there a little bit and then see what else is coming.
It's a great question. Can I ask it back to you? Because you said you kind of said as part of your dialogue, injury is what happened. And it doesn't have to be the specifics of the injury, but what took it to a different level to call it an injury for you?
It took me, I would say, over a year to accept the fact that the pain I was experiencing was not only chronic, but something that I could call an injury.
So pain was a piece of that.
So pain, I went playing in a higher education setting with that as my major. It's so difficult to process the fact that maybe playing is not the best idea for me right now. Maybe my body is telling me to stop. Maybe I need to rest and take a break. So for me, as a music performance major, that idea terrified me. That was, music performance majors can't get injured. That's, that's, your career's over. Or,
Goodness.
So it was very hard for me to grasp that I was injured or just dealing with pain that meant I should stop or pull back from playing. And I think eventually when it started costing me my sleep and, I had trouble eating, you can watch, as I mentioned in the video, my rational thoughts started slipping. And at that point I realized things were so bad, I had to finally recognize that things were bad and I wasn't experiencing the world the way I normally have. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
Wow.
hugely. It's so interesting how it's a domino effect, like it just starts to, everything It's like a spider web, and once you pull that one strand, everything is all of a sudden responding to pain, whatever stimulus. I mean, in probably the simplest sense, it's an imbalance from our own sense of equilibrium, or however we feel we move through the world. Because there are plenty of people who are, we may look and go, oh, you have a disability, and they're like, well, I'm not injured, it's who I am, you know, so it's being cautious, but I think our own internal idea of what's out of whack, so to speak, whether it's mental, physical, or like you were saying, it's all of a sudden a tidal wave that everything is embroiled in.
Yeah,
What she said.
well, definitely, I think we talked about it a little bit when you came. So many musicians, professional musicians, feel that they need to be something that is not really them, and somebody is pushing them to become that thing, otherwise it's not really serious. I give the example very often of musicians who feel that in order to play something with musical intensity, they must feel physical tension. Because without the physical tension, they are not really fully there with their expression. And that's already something which is so much part of who they are and how they feel. So, very often, I mean, if you're not going to suffer in order to get there, you're not going to make it. So you better suffer early, so you can have that out of the way and then move on. And all this sort of bullshit, I mean, is out there in the real professional world of musicians. Anyway.
Hard work equals success.
No pain, no gain.
There you go. Good accent. With the American.
Well, it connects to that other issue also. I've seen it in students here that have talked to me after hearing my story. It's the idea that you're not allowed to get help until it's so bad. It's like an absolute nightmare or horror story. When, like you mentioned, really the goal should be prevention and not waiting until things get so bad that you seek help.
I went to undergrad at McAllister College up in St. Paul, and I was losing my mind. Like, I don't know, I was stressed out, pre-med, like how do I get into med school if you guys have pre-med friends? You know it from just your own paths of intensity. I was anxious. I just was not in a state of joy at all. It was just one panicky thing to the next, and everything had to be an A, and everything, you know, it was just horrible. I could tell you all the things I could do. So I finally thought, like, I'm gonna get help, and I went to our student health services, and it was such a courageous moment. It's almost like I didn't want anybody to see that I was going there. I didn't tell my parents, you know, there's a lot of stigma, and there wasn't, because who cares? You know, it's just me walking into a building. So I go in and I wait and I meet with this woman, and by the end of it, she goes, "You're just fine. You're healthier than I am." And I just didn't know even what to say. I laughed. And of course, now with years to reflect on it, I was like, well, I don't know who the hell you are compared to me, but that shouldn't have mattered.
Yeah.
And I also remember thinking, well, maybe I'm just a whiner, or maybe, but I knew more. I knew that I was not well. So what I knew was I was very good at looking well. And I bet we're all really good at that until we're not. You know, until that person snaps, or until this, or until that, or, you know, I don't know. I've got goosebumps right now because it's the really thing that haunts me about what we do to ourselves and maybe what we do to each other, or what we think we have to do to just make it through. Because that's a horrible feeling. It's a horrible feeling to be tapped in, saying and doing all the shiny things, and then you leave that environment and you just... And that takes so much of the energy just to even be that person. I think of like Robin Williams, you know, and after he committed suicide, and he's like, what the hell did the funniest guy who ever, you know, this guy who looked like he was always on cocaine. Well, that's exactly it. He was moving so fast to outrun whatever it was. And I can't speak for him, but I just know in my own experience that keep dancing, keep going. Yeah, it's so great to meet you all. It's so fun to be here, you know, and I am.
Yeah, something Uri, you said a couple of minutes ago about allowing things and staying with it and not running, you just said
Yeah.
not running from it. I think that is central to everything we're talking about, mental, physical, the relationship with oneself and everything that you're relating to. A lot of you know that I was a breast cancer, I'm a breast cancer survivor, and 6.5 years ago when I was going through chemotherapy, at a very difficult time when I didn't know my prognosis, very terrifying, and I'm also somebody who suffers from generalized anxiety, sometimes depression, so, you know, a whole lifetime of what you're describing. So I went to my therapist, and to my credit, I had a good therapist, as I highly recommend. It's a great thing to examine oneself and have a skilled person to help you facilitate that. And I said, you know what, I'll probably be fine when I'm doing stuff, like the next appointment. I'm worried about myself when I come out of this. And because I know myself. So, you know, I was setting this up, and then she suggested a mindfulness meditation class. And I went, and after 2 sessions, I had this incredible breakthrough. And for me, it was, life was never the same again. Because what I realized, and this is going to sound really crazy, but it's absolutely true, and I would imagine this is not far off for somebody dealing with a debilitating injury kind of crisis. I was trying to do my little meditation, very hard to do for an anxious person. And I realized that I was more afraid of feeling anxious than I was of dying. And I mean this sincerely. And it was this sort of like awakening of, you're running so far away because of your anxiety from seeing things that you're not with it. You gotta sit with the pain. You've gotta sit with whatever it is to go through it, to have clarity. And for me, that has been transformative in my teaching, my playing, everything that I do. And I also engage in self-compassion practice. I love that you did this. And basically that just means being kind and gentle with yourself, especially if you're going through something very difficult, like an injury. So, you know, and there's a great resource, and the last thing I want to say about it was we have the Center for Healthy Minds on campus where Dr. Richie Davidson heads up. And there's a Healthy Minds app. It's free. And you can try out some of these things. And they have wonderful different walking meditations, things that are 30 seconds, things that are 30 minutes. You can really, it's centered in well-being in a very holistic way. So I would strongly recommend that to all of you if you don't know about it.
Can you repeat the question that you asked us? We're
We're wandering.
No, great, because I was thinking about it, but I lost the question.
I think I did too.
Okay, never mind. So anyway, just an idea. A student of mine who was constantly trying very hard, I remember some years ago, and was very eager to excel and to succeed. And I asked that student about the grade. Of course, A. And I asked that student, please, next semester, 1B. 1B, let's see if you can do it. Let's see. Okay. This is an order from your professor. Bring 1B. 1B.
I'm getting a rash. Just hearing you say that. Making me anxious.
She was successful. It was so amazing. It was so amazing. But I think part of the thing is also to trust your intuition. I mean, learning to trust your intuition. It's going to help in your musical communication also, rather than always try to do what you are told that is the right way. Even if you feel that your intuition tells you something very contrary to what you hear, I mean, I would highly recommend going there. Again, Jess was talking, I mean, I come from a family of Holocaust survivor. So this is a huge thing. I mean, both my parents survived the camps, I mean, lost their families. My entire life in this doomsday scenario, and anxiety, talking about anxiety, how to live this. And okay, you are now the savior of the world because all of those who perished from this lineage. And what? I needed how to deal with it. So luckily I had some very good help, mental help, with wonderful people. And I'm looking at consultation with psychiatrists, psychologists as continued education. It's not anything, it's not a stigma or anything, it's just continued education. I want to be more educated about me. That's about it.
When there are students or musicians who want to seek help, what do you think the most common barriers are for seeking treatment and help? And do you have any recommendations to work through those and still get the treatment they need?
Time. If I really put my student boots back on in my head, I didn't have time to get better. Like, I didn't have time to find help. It's like, well, that takes time. Because I've got to study for OCAM from this time to this time to this time to this time, and then blah, 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 blah. You know, so just budgeting it and thinking it's worth the time. And then there's the unknown of then, well, how much more time after that initial time? That would be just one piece of it. I would say time is the first thing that would come to mind as a student. Stigma is going to be in there and all that stuff. Where to go? Who to trust? And even when you're saying, like, you found therapists, I'm like, oh, how did you find good ones? Because that's another thing, too. You don't have time to waste your time on someone who doesn't know what they're doing.
But sometimes I think you have to go to somebody who's not good and realize that that's not really good. I mean, and trust
I was giving the type A assessment of what would prevent me from going.
Yeah. No, right.
Right, but that's okay if they don't. I mean, they do know something. To learn something.
I think failure in general in concerts is a great teacher. I mean, why do we have to succeed all the time? What's wrong about failing and learning from it? Or feeling that, okay, I was not successful. Okay, next time, let's see. I mean, what can I learn from it? I mean, if I end up going to someone who's not really helpful, do I know that I'm in the wrong place? Do I trust my instincts, my intuition to tell me, yeah, that's not for you? And I've had that too. I think your primary teachers are really, really a good place to start. And many of them, I'm sure, I mean, knowing our faculty, they will be sensitive to even if you don't tell them, to notice. Because I think the whole thing, for me at least, about teaching is the curiosity about you. I mean, the students. This is what keeps me alive. I'm learning from it. I don't want to tell you something that I think you should be doing. I want to learn from you about you. And then I learn something, and then we can start having some kind of a relationship, a communication, and see where it takes us.
I was just going to say the same thing, that your teacher is a really good place to start. And if they're not receptive, you have to advocate for yourself. I've just been blown away, Anna, by your willingness to share your story. There's so much power in that, and how you learn to be an advocate for yourself, and to figure out what worked and what didn't, and stay the course to sort through all of that. It's very brave and courageous. And you know, as a teacher, when somebody's coming to me and sharing that in a vulnerable way, I know what that costs them. And that's really important to honor and to try to problem solve together, as Ari was saying. You know, it's sort of well, tell me what's going on with you. Because our bodies are unique, and how we, you know, process things, it's so individual. So your story, you have to share your story. Find somebody to start with, would be my biggest advice. And you mentioned friends, peers that were really supportive, teachers, and then hopefully, you know, at some point if you need medical practitioners or mental health care, others can help guide you to get what you need. But you have to learn to share it, to put it out there.
Yeah. So before I open the floor up for questions, I just wanted to add that with my experience with an injury, I think, you know, you receive a lot of support, you receive a lot of opinions, and you receive a lot of, thoughts and opinions, a lot. And a lot of it can be really great and very helpful, and a lot of it can be not so great. And I think my biggest piece of advice when students come to me is, you know, my story is found shared quite a bit, which is really great. I hope it helps. My biggest piece of advice is trusting your intuition and trusting your gut and knowing that the person who's the biggest expert on what you're going through right now is you, and it will never be anyone else. So you know what's best for you, and you have to learn how to filter all those thoughts and opinions and pick and choose which ones you believe will be most helpful, because I really do believe your intuition and your gut and your experiences will not steer you wrong. Maybe false information or people who don't know your story fully, that's where you might get steered wrong sometimes. So we're going to open the floor up for questions. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask our wonderful panel?
I just wanted to, I haven't really talked a lot about my experience with injury since I've been here in Wisconsin. But very briefly, what I'll say is I was at another institution for my undergraduate degree, and I experienced a performance, overuse injury. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anything about that at all. And I was in a situation where my program, my school, did not have the resources or the knowledge anywhere that I knew about to be able to help me at all in any way. It seemed like everywhere I reached out to, someone either didn't know or didn't have a good satisfying answer or something. So just to like maybe provide evidence to what Anna was talking about, I just started reaching out to everybody I could think of in my life who might have any wisp of knowledge about anything related to this. And I reached out to somebody which led me to Uri, actually. And so the reason I'm so glad for that. But the reason I'm sitting here today, the reason that I think strongly believe the reason that I am a musician still is because I didn't accept the circumstances of the situation. I didn't accept that, sorry, we can't help you. That was not, that I wasn't going to accept that as an answer, and I was going to continue searching until I found something.
Thanks for sharing that.
I have a very broad question, which has been addressed in many different forms, I think, in the past hour, is about what the role of mentorship is within an injury. So how does one find the proper mentor, or even sometimes acknowledging that the person that you think is a mentor may not be giving you the right advice? I guess just super broad how you might experience that in your own experience or with students.
Well, if I may share, both Jess and I are in the wellness subcommittee of the School of Music, and we are really working on a curriculum for what wellness is. Wellness is a very broad word, and I think very often we dilute it very much so that we won't have to do anything. So I'm very much in favor of finding a way so that there will be within the community, our School of Music community, a body or a person that will be also in the higher places that could be an advocate for mentoring people who need some help in order to live better life within the community, healthier life, and without stigmatizing it. And it just hopefully we can. We haven't had a chance yet, I think, through my 30 years here, I mean, to do. I'm actually taking upon myself before I retire, which I'm not planning to, just to advocate for that, so that the school will have a place, personal, and wellness and health is a very broad thing. It has so many different angles, and I think it's the more we are able to look into it, I think the more answers we will have. But that's where I am thinking about it.
Yeah, that's great. I would just say too that, you know, different people can give us different things. So it's kind of like with relationships, you know, you've got different people who enrich your life. So if you're creative about it, maybe it's not your applied teacher. Maybe you made a connection with the conductor of orchestra or something that you can have these conversations. And I love what you keep saying is you really looked around and you took in a lot of information and you found what worked for you, and some of it trial and error because of your unique story and experience. But I think being open to that. I will also say that one of my professional service things that I do, I'm the wellness chair of the, what's it called, National Conference on Keyboard Pedagogy for the Francis Clark Center. So it's very within my domain of keyboard practice. But I also have attended things like performance arts medicine conferences. And there are a bunch of schools now that have these great wellness websites. One of my former students, Paulo Savadu, heads up the wellness initiative at the University of Michigan. So check out that site for their School of Music page. There are all these videos and consultations with a lot of medical practitioners. So I think that it's much easier than even when you were starting this process to get basic information too, which can help you know how to find the right mentor and the person to help you guide. But the curiosity comes back. We come back to that being open to what you might learn from it.
I think guide is key as well, knowing having the mentor not only know their own limitations and their role as an educator and a mentor, but also drawing boundaries as the student and knowing that this is someone to help guide you and not, like, you know, Professor Vardi was saying, not someone to like completely lead and take control, because we're all our own people and we know ourselves best. So thank you everyone for coming to the mental health panel discussion. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. We're going to be taking a small short break, so feel free to talk to our panelists, ask questions if we didn't have time. And we will have a workshop on yoga at 10 minutes at 2:15. It'll be by Nicole Newman. She's a Juilliard trained flutist and also teaches there. So stay tuned for that.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you.